It's Matt Streb. Matt, good morning to you.
Riley, what's going on? It feels like it's been a while.
It feels like it has been, and I know we're headed for the holiday break. I must give you some kudos because over the past 3 days, I've heard more from people. I've gotten a note. I've heard it in the hallways, and there was a nice comment by our friend Michael Coolidge just a few moments ago, how much people enjoy your appearances with us and how we all learn something. And we appreciate you taking the time to do it.
That's very nice to hear. I appreciate that. So, yeah, no, I missed talking to you. Sorry, it's been a little busy, but good to be back. A lot has happened since we last talked, I guess. So
let's start a little bit with athletics, though. I mean, we always hit Husky athletics. Give us the latest.
Absolutely. I got it. So one thing I thought we're pretty excited about is that our women's basketball team, Riley, coming into this week scored the second highest most points in the country. At the Division I level, they're averaging over 90 points a game. So, come on down to the convocation.
Wow.
We got a men's game tonight. We've got a women's game on Friday. A lot of fun to watch. Our men are struggling a little bit right now, but I think they've got a long season to go. I think they're kind of working on gelling. The women have been off to a really nice start. We've got Allie Lehman, who had 48 points and 21 rebounds in a game the other day, and then had 2 triple doubles. And it's been fun basketball to watch. So.
That's outstanding. When you mention those numbers, those are like UConn kind of numbers.
Oh, they're incredible. I mean, they've been. I was lucky enough to be on the search committee that hired Coach Carlson, Lisa Carlson. And one of the things she said when we hired her was, she said, "I expect to get up and down the court, and I expect to score." And she's lived by her word. I'll tell you that. It's been pretty impressive. The other thing I'll mention really quickly about Allie Lehman. So here's a young lady who is in the ROTC, and she will actually be joining the Army once she graduates. So, I mean, this is, she's just really a phenomenal young woman, and we've got a lot of great kids on our women's basketball team. Not only are they doing well on the court, they had, coming into this year, they had the highest GPA in the Mid-American Conference, so a lot of stuff to celebrate. And
that's where the faculty athletic rep comes into play. Talk about that GPA a little bit. That's very impressive.
I talk about the GPA, but I'll tell you, the student-athletes obviously perform in the classroom. And I've seen some of our grades come in so far. It looks like we've had a pretty good, another pretty good semester. So yeah, a lot of good stuff going on here. We got wrestling going on. Gymnastics starts up. We got our indoor track. I think has a meet coming up after the break. So a lot of exciting things happening here.
Very cool, and well worth the trip to DeKalb to check out some of the great athletics that are waiting for you there, and in some really nice venues as well. So let that make that part of your New Year's resolution. Now I get over to DeKalb more for Husky athletics. Matt would appreciate it. So would we. All right.
Yeah, come on down to the Convocation Center. It's a great place to watch a game.
It is a great place to watch a game. I've always enjoyed time spent there. All right, let's move over to the world of politics. Sky's falling. Elections are rigged. They're hacked. It's Russians. We should redo things. What other embarrassing bit of shouting is worthy of note?
Well, I mean, this continues to be unlike anything. I guess obviously we saw the break-in of the Democratic headquarters in 1972, but it just seems like more and more crazy news comes out. And here's the thing about the Russia stuff. I mean, I don't believe that the Russia emails influenced the outcome of the election.
I don't either.
But what I do believe is it's also scary that we have a foreign country that is able to access the sensitive emails that they've been able to access. And, so I think it's kind of like, a little bit, we were talking last time. I think Stein had started her recount push in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. And here's one thing I'll say, Riley. I didn't think that you'd see much of the way of change there, and what we've seen really has.
And you were right.
But I will say this. Our election systems in this country are completely screwed up. And I know that I'm on the air, so I have to be a little bit. I'd like to say something even worse.
I bet you would.
They are awful. I mean, so the fact, and we invest in so much stuff, but we don't actually invest in our elections, right? We don't spend the money you need to have a well-run election, and there is so much error that goes into election. I mean, I know we've debated back and forth about voter fraud and things like that in the past. Part of the problem, it's not voter fraud that's the huge issue. It's just election administration incompetence. It's election administration machines that are screwed. I mean, we just don't invest in our elections the way we need to. And so, I think it's a good idea to audit our elections and get a sense of what is actually working, what is not. Not because I think that there's going to be a change in the outcome of the election necessarily, but there is a huge amount of error in every single election. You're talking about, hundreds of thousands of votes in a presidential election that won't be counted due to voter error and a variety of other things. And so it really, one of the things that happened in 2000 was it kind of shone a light on the fact that our election systems were antiquated. And you would hope that we would have responded to that. We did to an extent, but still, here we are 16 years later, and we're not much better off than we were back in 2000.
So I was going to say, what would be the holdup? I mean, we have identified a lot of the difficulties or areas that need a good bit of scrutiny and improvement, yet we jam the brakes on right before we make the move to do it?
Well, I think one of the things, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here, but one of the things, immediately after 2000, remember the whole punch card fiasco?
Yeah, the Chads and all that.
Chads and all that, right? Okay, well, by all accounts, punch card machines they had a high residual vote error rate, which is, essentially if you go in and you vote, right, and your vote's not counted, all right, you're a residual vote, right? And so what you saw a push immediately after this, too, was to go to electronic voting, right? Now, it seems like electronic voting would be a great thing, all right? But here's a couple problems we have with electronic voting. I mean, there's some concern about security of electronic voting, which is one of the reasons why you need to do an audit. If you're going to have electronic voting, you want to make sure that you have a paper receipt, all right, so you can go back and actually confirm what the vote totals were and whether they were accurate or not, all right? But the other problem is, I tell my students all the time, we bought these machines way back in 2003, 2004. Imagine if you were in my class right now and you were using a computer from 2003 or 2004. It wouldn't work very well, right?
Right.
The computer would be broken, and in many cases, they don't make the replacement parts for the machines. And so, when I sit there and say that our election administration is screwed up, it's not a knock on even our election administrators. What it is it's an incredibly complex issue, and because we're so decentralized, that adds another level of complexity to it, right? And we don't invest. We're not putting money into running our elections. I had my students go out, and it was a great experience for them. They actually were election judges this year. They were stunned. I mean, I had students who were, working from 5:30 in the morning to 10, 11 o'clock at night. And they were, and it's partially because we don't have enough election judges, because we don't, so there's all sorts of things that are, we have to fix with our electoral system, I think. And so I guess, the answer, this is a long-winded way to say that, well, Jill Stein's recounts, I certainly didn't expect that you would see any sort of change, right? I do think it's important that we have a really good understanding and audit regularly our election results, just so we get a sense of what is working and what is not. And one of the great things about having the decentralized system that we do is you can get a sense, you can get a comparison of, well, this machine seems to be working better than this machine, or, the ballot design, there's so much technical stuff, there's so much minutia that is involved in here that is incredibly, incredibly important, but we don't spend a lot of time thinking.
And the thing that jumps out at me as you're describing this too, being as divided as we are politically, and how at cross swords the two political parties are. How are we ever going to get together and sit down and go, bipartisan? Let's go about having a look into elections and see what needs to be shored up, see what's working, because the other side is instantly going to scream, oh no, this is about changing, this is about rigging, this is about you trying to get an unfair advantage. Nobody seemingly will give anybody the benefit of the doubt that we do want to work together and get it straightened out to where the chance of big time problems is lessened.
Yeah, it's so difficult. You're exactly right. And as I tell my students all the time, you have to have these conversations now. You have to have them today when there isn't actually an election going on, right? This would be the equivalent of having a basketball game, and all of a sudden you decide midway through you want to change the rules, and rightly so. One team's going to be upset, and the other team's. So you have to have these conversations today. You have to have these conversations now. The problem is that, and I may have used this example before, and if I did, I apologize, but parties understandably are going to try to manipulate the rules to win the election. And
sure.
What I use in my class all the time is if you go back to 2000, right, there was a big debate over the intent of the voter. Who should actually have their vote counted? And so if you remember, there was kind of the dimpled Chads and the pregnant Chads and all that type of stuff. And what the Gore campaign was saying was, look, you could tell from that ballot that the person intended to vote for Al Gore. Therefore, their vote should count for Al Gore, right? And Bush campaign was saying, no, look, they didn't follow directions. They didn't go. It wasn't counted by the machine, and so therefore, how can you infer what somebody's intent is? It shouldn't count. Okay, fair enough, right? That's a debate to have. Go fast forward to several years later to a Minnesota Senate race, all right, where you had Al Franken running against Norm Coleman. This time, Al Franken, the Democrat, was in the lead, all right, so he was in George Bush's position. Norm Coleman, the Republican, all right, was behind. The number one rule of recounting is if you're behind, you always want more votes to count. And so what do we see? We see the Coleman campaign saying, "Wow, it's the intent of the voter. You got to make sure that."
Right.
Yeah, they didn't fill in the oval. They circled the person's name, but it was clear that that person was voting for Norm Coleman, and so therefore they should count. The point is that nobody stands for any sort of principle. They stand for whatever helps their party win, right? And we could have a really interesting debate right now about, well, what do we really believe the intent of a voter standard should be, right? The problem is we often wait until it's too late, and then we're fighting over things where you're never going to have any sort of compromise or understanding.
No, and because we're going to fight all these over these things, they're going to sit down at the table, like you said, and work these things out. So what's currently going on throughout the news cycle and all that is just a bunch of random shouting over over what the Russian hacking. Was there hacking? What effect did it have? What did they do? It really seems here that the party that is having difficulty accepting these election results is not helping the country at all by screaming that this was all of a sudden turned over by Russia.
Well, I think you got to be careful too who we're talking about. There was actually a really interesting op-ed piece in the New York Times this morning that was actually arguing that Democrats weren't arguing enough, right? That the Democratic Party was actually fairly silent on this. I think the key thing, look, the reason why Hillary Clinton lost the election was because she lost Wisconsin, she lost Michigan, she lost Pennsylvania, right? She did not do well with working class white voters. And she did not have a message that resonated with that community. And that's why she lost. I mean, all this other stuff, I think, Trump voters, did break at the last minute. Did the Comey email have it? It may have had some effect, but at the end of the day, she won the popular vote by roughly 3 million votes, but that's not how we elect a president. We elected by the Electoral College, and this is why she lost. So I think it's at this point it's kind of absurd to really go in and debate would she have won, wouldn't she have won, But what I do think is awfully disconcerting, as I said earlier, was, my goodness, let's figure out how in the world a foreign country can get access to such sensitive information, right? That is a legitimate concern that I think members of both parties should be worried about. And I do think you're seeing that, on the Senate side in particular. McConnell's come out and several other people. That frightens me a lot, Riley. It doesn't frighten me in terms of this affected the outcome of the election. It just frightens me in terms of that we have sensitive information that is so vulnerable. I guess,
and I feel the same way that you do, but part of me that is really, I guess, getting a belly full of what I consider to be disingenuous behavior are the same people who are screaming now that when China hacked the State Department a couple of years back and walked off with 6 million names, Social Security number, all of the stuff that went along with that, there was a little hue and cry at the time, but then we've been silent ever since. If foreign nations interfering and hacking was such a big deal that millions got pulled away by China from the State Department, shouldn't this dialogue have been ongoing all the way along, right up to and through this election?
Yeah, I don't disagree. And again, I think a lot of times, politics is full of hypocrisy, right? I mean, you see people all the time that take a stand, and then all of a sudden they look the other way, and when it is no longer in favor of their position or whatever the case might be. And that's one of the things that is frustrating. I mean, I believe in strong political parties. I'm a political scientist. Political scientists generally believe that parties are important in democracy. But I do get worried that so much about politics is about winning, it's about losing, and it oftentimes doesn't come down to what is in the best interest of the country. Now, that is Pollyannish. I understand it's somewhat naive. I mean, I'm getting ready. I get to go the opportunity to go see Hamilton again tonight, the musical. And trust me, things were just as brutal between Jefferson and Adams.
Oh, worse,
right?
worse.
So this is not, I mean, the notion that we have, that we're always putting the country first is, I mean, I realize that hasn't ever really existed in many ways, right? But I just think we're getting to a point where you have hyper-partisanship where, it's fine to push for your party, and political science studies would show that you actually want some polarization. You don't want the parties to look exactly alike. But I think we're at a point where, right now the rhetoric is just, the atmosphere is so toxic, it's very difficult to get anything done.
That crystallizes, I think, perfectly. See, that's why he's on all the time, because we all get to sit here and learn something from our friend Matt Streb, political science professor and faculty athletic rep at NIU. Matt, I know it's time for holiday break, so we'll get together again sometime in January. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely, Riley. Hey, Merry Christmas to you, Happy Holidays to all your listeners, and go Huskies.